Hello, and welcome back to another brief history. Today we're talking about the ancient Egyptian god Anubis, one of the most famous and well-known of the gods in the Egyptian pantheon. Not only will we go over his historical history, but also the history of the character in my book, Gods of Death. So stay tuned for that as we dive into ancient history and a brief history. Anubis, also called Inpu or Anpu, that's his original name, is the Egyptian god of funerary rites, embalming and guiding souls through the underworld. Usually sewn either as a black jackal or a man with a jackal's head, Anubis was the go-to deity when it came to protecting graves and helping the dead make it safely to the afterlife. His scar scheme wasn't random either. The black skin wasn't about jackals, it symbolized rebirth, the fertile soil of the Nile, and yes, the look of a corpse after embalming. Fun fact, the Greeks thought he was weird enough to call him Barker. That still links him to their own god Hermes, which is where Anubis comes from. Yes, there is a god called Anubis, a temporary time where, for some reason, somebody in Greek in Egypt are like, let's combine Hermes and Anubis and make Anubis. This exists. This is a real statue. It's pretty crazy, huh? Well, we call the god Anubis. It's actually what his Greek name was, as the Egyptians originally called him Anpu or Inpu, which meant royal child or to decay, fitting to him because, he's a god of death, basically. And, that's basically what his name meant. Anubis is actually one of the oldest gods in the Egyptian pantheon, being found around 3000 BC in the first dynasty of ancient Egypt, which is a pretty long time, making him older than a lot of other gods, including his own parents, technically speaking, which is kind of funny. So I guess it makes sense for one of the oldest gods in the pantheon to be one of the most famous ones. So there you go. The ancient Egyptians were the first ever furries, in case you're wondering. I mean, they really were. They loved animals, and each animal for each god represented something in particular. So why was Anubis protected as a jackal? Well, it's pretty simple. Jackals are scavenger animals, and they would go scavenging around grave sites because, they get to eat whatever the hell they want. The Egyptians viewed this as the jackal must be part of these jackals eating up our dead must be some connecting to a god who must also be jackal related, and if we pray to this jackal god, maybe who might be the god of death based off this stuff, well, maybe the jackals will stop, which I guess they did because they had better protection over the graves, as you probably know how well secured a lot of Egyptian tombs are. But yeah, that's a pretty interesting story. Pretty much any Egyptian god who has an animal head, usually there's some meaning behind that animal, which is pretty neat. During this period, Anubis was the lord of the underworld, which is in ancient Egypt is called Duat, in case you're wondering, which is what the underworld of is. There's whole different layers and all sorts of stuff like that, but this is about Anubis, not Duat. You can go on forever about Duat. There's a lot in Duat. It's a crazy underworld. But yeah, Anubis was the ruler for this throughout the Old Kingdom until the New Kingdom came around, and his father, Osiris, is great, who basically took over as the god of death in ancient Egyptian religion. But Anubis stayed on because he was still a well-liked and worshipped god, so he just became mainly associated with mummification and the embalming process, which ironically was very important to the ancient Egyptians. Obviously, it's one of the most things they're famous for, which one of the main reasons why Anubis is so well known today. Also because the Greeks really liked Anubis, as we already established with the Anubis thing. He's a cool guy, look at that. Helping protect gods. Now, the funny thing about Anubis is that even though he's well known and he had a very important role of judging souls into the afterlife, he doesn't have that many myths in Egypt about him. Egyptian mythology doesn't have a lot of stories. There's one very famous one about Set and taking over. It's kind of like Lion King, but Anubis isn't really involved that much. He kind of just sticks to his one role, and that's why he was probably so worshipped, because he was just a good guy who helped mummification. Though we did have a way of killing souls that weren't good, and it's not very pleasant. One of the most well-known things about Egyptian mythology is the way that you get judged. Essentially, when someone dies, they have to go through caverns in order to get to the judgment room. Here, Anubis, sometimes other gods are there as well. There's Toph on the right, he's the Ibis head god who's writing everything down. He's a god of knowledge. And essentially what is going on here is that Anubis is the one who most of the time is weighing of the heart, as the heart is the most important part of anybody's soul in ancient Egypt. Your heart tells a person whether they're good or bad, and the scale right there will tell if they are worthy or not. He uses the feather of the goddess Maat, or another one, depends on which version, but I'm going to assume it's Maat, and he weighs the feather. If the feather is lighter than the heart, then you're good to go. Or if it's heavier, I don't really remember. Either way, you don't want your heart weight on one side. I probably should remember which way it should go, but who the hell cares right now? Because you see that weird thing, that little creature down there? Well, that thing is Emmet, which is Anubis' pet, who's a crocodile, big cat, lion, or leopard, or where the hell it is, and hippo. Yeah, hippo. And that will devour your soul if your heart, essentially, and basically you will cease to exist. But if your heart is good, you will get to go to the Field of Reeds, which is called Eru, which is the heaven part of Duat, which is great. Most people get there, especially pharaohs and kings, but you have to be a good person, And it's basic stuff to be a good person. You just gotta be, don't be mean and stuff like that. Pretty basic. Anubis' family history is also kind of complicated due to the fact that ancient Egypt and their gods lasted for thousands of years in different dynasties. In those thousands of years, a lot of things have changed. While Anubis remained a very prominent god throughout pretty much most of the kingdom in different areas, his family lineage was always changing. Originally, he was just the son of Ra, because, it's the most basic thing. We don't know Ra is the main god of ancient Egypt, the sun god, in case you're wondering, the creator god. But that changed when the new kingdom introduced Osiris, who became his father. My father. But that kept changing. Now, most sources cite that Anubis is the son of Osiris, the god of death, and Nephthys, who is not Osiris' wife, by the way. Nephthys is the goddess of funerals, basically, so kind of similar to, in a way, the other gods of death related in ancient Egypt, but, she wasn't as well known. And, but yeah, a lot of times, like, oh, what about Isis? Isis was one of the main female gods who was considered the goddess of love and protection. She was a very, famous god in ancient Egypt, and she was also sometimes considered as Anubis' mom. However, most cited stories is that she actually helped raise Anubis because of the fact she's connected to Osiris. But yeah, and that's pretty much most of that. But Anubis also had a consort and a kid, but very little information is known about each of those characters too. Anput is a very minor goddess who basically has the same exact role as Anubis. She just helps him out, but she very rarely appears. She looks pretty generic, and in fact she has a really weird thing of Anubis on her forehead, carrying by the feathers, which are Maat's feathers. Kind of weird design. This character, like I said, he pretty much just does exactly what Anubis does, she barely appears. And they also have a kid who is so vague, and their name means water, I guess, but they also kind of do what she does, so it's very unclear if that's even really true. So overall, this character does not appear very much in adaptations of Egyptian mythology for kind of obvious reasons. There's not a whole lot to her. Sorry. A lot of the Egyptian gods worship all over the Nile Delta. What was really noteworthy is that each one usually had a city or place that particularly liked that certain god, where they're really from. And for Anubis, it was Sinopolis. In case you're wondering, that literally means City of the Dog. Pretty funny. And yes, and priests there would wear a wooden mask shaped like the jackal head. But yeah, like I said, Anubis was pretty popular. He would be depicted and made statues of pretty much all over Egypt, and even in Greek areas, which is pretty funny. And that's why I feel like he's one of the most noteworthy ones. Not only does he represent most of the death in Egypt, the god of death basically, even though that's Osiris, he was pretty known for that, and because of that, in fact, the Egyptians' death rituals are so well known and interesting. That's why he kind of became one of the main gods, even now being more popular than Ra, who is the main god of Egypt. So yeah, there's Anubis for you. The god Anubis appears in my book as actually one of the main characters, not the main character, of the God of Death series, which I'm currently working on. So here's the character's history in my books, which I based heavily off his mythology persona, but I did change quite a few things during this story. Anubis was born from a secret affair between Osiris and Nephthys. They aren't supposed to be together because Osiris is married to Isis and Nephthys is married to Set. Anyway, Anubis was hidden from the world for years. Raised in secrecy, he grew up assisting his father Osiris in guiding souls for the afterlife and weighing their hearts against the feather of Maat, who was pure. If it was pure, it passed on. If not, his loyal pet Ammit would devour it. As a teen, Anubis journeyed beyond Egypt and formed a mischievous friendship with the Greek god Hermes. Later, he inherited Osiris' role as Lord of the Afterlife, an honor he first welcomed. Over time, fading beliefs of mortals made his sacred duties lonesome. Centuries passed, and humanity forgetting the gods. Anubis was granted rare permission to actually leave Duat. and he was able to revisit Greece. Now as a delegate of the gods in the Gods of Death Council, where deities from across the globe gathered to address their quickly growing irrelevance. There he quickly bonded with Salat, and after a tense start, grew close to Hell. Lucifer also appeared, proposing an uneasy alliance to restore their beliefs. Anubis was skeptical, but dire circumstance forced him to listen. After the uneasy alliance with Lucifer, Anubis learned that back at his old hometown, his father Osiris had been murdered by his brother Set, partially due to the fact that Set learned about the affair that Osiris had to create Anubis. So Anubis returned to Egypt, and with the help of Isis, Thoth, and Bastet, they sought to travel to find Maat, who may help bring balance back to Egypt after all the chaos that had engulfed it after Set basically took over Osiris' position as Lord of the Underworld. The journey to find Maat was not very easy, as she was located in a very deep and dark and dangerous part of Duat known as Isfet, which is the chaotic region, a very chaotic and odd, strange region that's very hard for most people to get through, even the Egyptian gods. And he was able to get through there with the help of his half-brother Babi, who only allowed him to do so if he gave up his position as the main funerary gods, which Anubis did because he needed to save all Egypt from his crazy uncle Set, because Set is crazy. And he was able to get Maat to help them just a little bit, as she was not really willing to go back to the Pantheon after her own hang-ups. Anubis was able to help defeat Set and actually stop Isis from murdering him and give him a fair trial where he was sentenced to forever protect Ra Solar Burke. I think that's how you say the word. It's a ship, look up Burke. I don't know if I'm saying that right. And yes, that is the end of Anubis' journey. He lost his position along with his pet Ammon to Babi, and now he's got to figure out a way to bring balance back to the rest of the pantheons, as the meeting of gods of death caused chaos throughout the entire world. But that's just another story for Gods of Death. I didn't go over every detail here, but make sure to read my book. You can check it out down in the description below, and I'm doing an audiobook series that goes better into detail. Thank you for watching this video, and if you liked it, stay tuned for more stuff. I might be doing more Halloween/horror stuff this month due to the fact it's Halloween. Last year I did a movie review every day. I won't be doing that, but I'll be doing Halloween themed stuff, so check that out. This is kind of Halloween themed, but not really. Sorry if I rambled a little bit. I just need to get this video out. Anyway, thank you for watching, and stay tuned for more.